Age of Imprisonment has the potential to answer some of the biggest lingering questions about the Wilds era, and maybe even Zelda lore as a whole. Ever since Breath of the Wild, the mysteries of the Zonai era have been an obsession for fans. Tears of the Kingdom finally gave us a glimpse into their history, but it also left us with even more questions than answers. But now, as we travel with Princess Zelda to experience the ancient past for ourselves, we might have the opportunity to finally solve some of those mysteries. Now, I know that I'm asking a lot from a Hyrule Warriors game from a lore perspective. And while I don't think it should have been on this game to give us the answers that Tears of the Kingdom left out, I do believe this is really our last chance to learn about the Zonai and other secrets of the past. But there's one reason I think that it could actually deliver, and that's that Princess Zelda herself is on the case. You have to remember that this iteration of the princess is incredibly inquisitive and wants to learn about the past. I often say that Zelda would be the ultimate Zonai theorist. She personally explores ruins and even creates the Zonai survey team to try and understand their civilization better. Now, transported to the past, she's living the theorist's dream, experiencing the past firsthand. So today, I want to walk through 7 major lore mysteries that Age of Imprisonment could solve. Now, a lot of these ideas will be tied to my own personal theories that I've made in the past, so I'll link any relevant videos in the description if you haven't seen them. But now, let's dive in with our first mystery. One of the biggest questions left hanging after Tears of the Kingdom is, where did the Zonai actually come from? Were they sky people, travelers from another planet, or something even stranger? As I've explored in a previous video, there were certainly a lot of hints pointing to them being aliens. Possibly extraterrestrials who descended to Hyrule to mine Zonite. But personally, I wasn't really sold on that idea, and I'm rooting for a less obvious answer. I'm not sure whether it will be explored or simply left to legend, but the Zonai origin story is something I'm hoping we'll learn more about. Now, the interesting thing about this is, from what we've learned from Zelda notes and the latest gameplay footage from Tokyo Games Fest, it seems like Rauru and Minoru have a profound lack of knowledge about their people's history. For instance, Rauru relies on legends from an even more ancient past in Zelda notes, but does not speak of a more recent history. And it's been revealed in the new demo footage that Minoru has barely explored the depths by the time Zelda arrives. This information was shocking to me, given how familiar with the area she seems in Tears of the Kingdom. However, I have to imagine that between Zelda's curious nature and Minoru's literal library of knowledge, we should be able to learn a bit more about the Zonai. I'm also hoping we'll learn more about the Zonai's relationship with the peoples of Hyrule. For a long time, I've had a theory that the original Zonai were conquerors, employing their technology against the people of Hyrule to unite the kingdom, whether through open warfare or a sort of one-sided diplomacy. Now, through Zelda notes, we've learned that the first contact happened long before Rauru's time. He refers to his ancestors encountering the people of Hyrule, so any conquering would have had to happen way back then. It does seem like some of the Zonai legends align with those of the people on land, which tell a much more peaceful story and probably confirms my conquest theory to be false. However, I still think it would be great to get more definitive proof of that, and I think our first encounters with each of the sages will tell us a lot about each people's current relationship with the Zonai Hylian Alliance. For instance, we see that Rauru and the Gerudo sage may initially meet in combat, so it would track to me that that begins as a tense relationship and that he'll need to convince her to come to his side. I'm going to be really curious to see how the Rito, Zora, and Gorons all respond to Rauru's call for help. It will also be interesting to learn more about the ancient Zonai's relationship with the depths. Again, in the demo, Minoru appears to be exploring the depths beyond her base camp for the first time with Zelda, and I'm so curious why that is. She refers to the surrounding area as ruins, which indicates again that these landmarks are tied to their ancient ancestors. So if that's the case, what happened there? Why did the Zonai stop their mining operations? The demo also states that the Zonai ancestors use sites of sacred power to navigate the darkness, and it appears we'll be seeking out beacons that enhance light power. I'll be very curious to learn more about that aspect of the underground as well. And speaking of the depths, I'm also hoping we'll learn a little bit more about the mystery species depicted in the underground mining statues. Whether we actually get to see them, or more likely, simply see a cutscene where Minoru recognizes their shape, I hope we'll get to find out more about who they are and what happened to them. If they are the mysterious Lome, or the Magma, or something else. Now, regarding the Zonai, the question I want to know above all is, what happened to them? Why are Rauru and Minoru the last of their species? Omitting any revelations about that from Zelda notes felt intentional, so it's possible that that could be explained here. Again, previously, I've theorized that because the Zonai are so much more powerful than the other civilizations in Hyrule, their empire would have had to collapse due to internal causes. And that perhaps any remaining Zonai attempted to seek immortality to preserve their species. Maybe first by attempting to transfer their souls into constructs, but if that failed, they could have turned to draconification and left the world behind. That theory's pretty out there, and I'll gladly have it disproven if it means we get a definitive answer as to what happened and when. And this is an area where I'm hoping Zelda will serve as a vehicle for the lore. As a character who's interested in learning from other civilizations, a simple, "Where are the other Zonai?" seems like a question that would be weird for her not to ask. Another mystery related to the people of this era that I hope this game may shed light on, or even depict, is a civil war within the Gerudo. This is yet another theory I've made a video on, and it's a concept I've been hoping to see since Tears of the Kingdom. Obviously, from the flashbacks we've seen, Ganondorf, as the Gerudo leader, was in opposition to Zonai rule. He ultimately bent the knee to Rauru in a false pledge of fealty. But now we know there were at least 2 Gerudo, and I'm sure more, who turned on their king and sided with Rauru. And we know that the sage went on to found the line of queens that would lead to Urbosa and eventually Riju. However, it's also very likely that there was a sect of Dark Gerudo who stayed allied with Ganondorf, like Twinrova, who I'm very excited to see more from. We've also seen evidence from around the Gerudo Desert that implies many Gerudo were jailed or executed, perhaps during or following this civil war. And I believe that those executed were Ganondorf loyalists who eventually are transformed into Gibdo upon his return. With all those pieces in place, I'd argue that that strongly implies that there was a schism within the Gerudo, between those who joined the Demon King's army and those who sided with the Zonai. Also, while I was editing this video, Nintendo released brand new character names and descriptions for the game. We now know the Gerudo sage is named Artie, and is described as a compassionate leader among the Gerudo who is bound by Gerudo law to serve Ganondorf. This, in combination with the fact that she looks depressed in every image we've seen of her, feels like more evidence toward this divide. It likely deeply pains her to turn on her king and his faction of supporters. Her description as a leader feels like it parallels Naburu's position as the second highest ranked Gerudo in Ocarina of Time, and it just feels like more confirmation that when she turns on Ganondorf, others will follow. Again, it's just a theory, but if we get to see anything related to this in the game, and I suspect that we will, I'm going to be thrilled. Moving on to our next mystery, one of the strangest items in Tears of the Kingdom was the Ancient Heroes aspect. This was one of the biggest, unexplained questions in the game, because while it was clearly of Zonai origin, given the armor style and the fact that it was a reward for completing all of Rauru's shrines, the Sheikah also clearly viewed it as the hero of the Ancient Calamity. And as a reminder, that Ancient Calamity was 10,000 years ago, not during Rauru's time. And to throw even more confusion into the mix, the aspect transforms Link into a species we've never seen. Now, some have speculated it's supposed to represent a Hylian Zonai hybrid, perhaps a descendant of Sonia and Rauru's union. We know they must have had kids, since they claim Zelda as their descendant. So, if that's true, I assume we would see that child in this game. If we do, that could prove or disprove any connection to the ancient hero. And on a related note, we also still don't know the true identity of the construct from the trailers, but many have drawn comparisons between the construct and the aspect, so seeing if that plays out will be interesting as well. Also, frankly, we don't even truly know what the aspect is. Its item description is incredibly vague and open to interpretation, so it would be awesome to get some clarity on that from this game. Alright, and the final mystery that I think this game might solve is a definitive timeline placement. Now, there has been a good amount of debate about when Tears of the Kingdom's past takes place on the Zelda timeline. I'm of the belief that everything that takes place in the Wilds era, including the ancient Zonai past, takes place way in the distant future, after all the timelines merge into one. This idea is called the refounding theory, after the idea that Hyrule is fully refounded in the distant future. However, others have suggested that the Zonai era is so long ago that it takes place prior to Skyward Sword. Now, there are a few things in this game that will likely end this debate. One that already does this, for me, is the presence of the battle Korok seen in the trailers. As explained in Wind Waker, the Koroks were an evolution of the Kokiri people. After that point in the timeline, we only see Koroks, no more Kokiri. So to have a Korok in the Skyward Sword era would either mean that the Koroks evolved into the Kokiri and then back, or that there's some funny time travel stuff happening. And to me, neither of those scenarios feels likely. The Korok isn't the only post-Wind Waker species that appears, however. We also have the Rito, who seem pretty well established as a race at that time. So again, I felt the matter was already settled, but this Korok stirred up a bunch of chatter, so I thought I'd mention it. Another component that would seal this debate would be the presence of the Master Sword. This is another element that I've made a video about, because if we're following the refounded Hyrule timeline, there should be a Master Sword that exists in the time of the Zonai. This came up in reaction to hearing Fi's theme in the second trailer, as some thought it implied the return of the Spirit of the Blade. However, I still feel that if Age of Imprisonment brings that second Master Sword into the story, it would invalidate a lot of the plot points from Tears of the Kingdom. But if they do find a way to incorporate it, it would be another piece of proof to definitively place the game after Skyward Sword. Since, of course, the whole point of that game is the original forging of the sword. So anyway, to wrap up, those are the big mysteries from the Wilds era that I'm hoping we'll get answers on in this game. And like I said at the top, I think it's a big ask for a Hyrule Warriors game to fill in the gaps in lore left open by Tears of the Kingdom. That being said, will I eat up every lore crumb they give me? Absolutely. Will I be mad if it proves all my theories wrong? Not at all, and here's why. When Nintendo said that Tears of the Kingdom would not have DLC and would be the last game in the Wilds era, I thought that was it. That we'd never get any more answers about the Zonai or that period of history. But since then, they've supplemented the lore through Zelda notes and now Age of Imprisonment. I'm conflicted about this, since ideally, this probably should have just all been in the original game. But then again, if they'd answered all my questions at the time, I wouldn't have had the space in the gray area of the unknown to create theories. So at the end of the day, if Age of Imprisonment answers my questions, I guess it will have been a win-win? I got all the ambiguity that leads to a good theory, but eventually may get the satisfaction of knowing whether I was right or wrong. Or maybe I won't. There's a decent chance this video will age horribly in 1 month, and we actually won't get any answers, but I'm hopeful until proven otherwise. I mean, even just in the time that it's taken me to edit this video, my theory about this character being the Chamberlain who wrote the Sky Tablets was confirmed. And we've gotten all that new evidence pointing towards a divide in the Gerudo. So far, the pre-release materials really feel like we're being set up for a lore-rich experience, and they've certainly given me a lot to speculate on already. The closer we get to release, the more it feels like the good old days leading up to Tears of the Kingdom where you could really go deep into Conspiracy Town. I mean, I know it's not a mainline Zelda game, so you really don't have as much freedom to speculate, but there's just something about the Zonai that really sends me down a rabbit hole every time. I find myself staring at these screenshots for way longer than I should be, just looking for hidden details. Like earlier this week, I convinced myself I figured out who this mystery Hylian fighter was, and now I've got this half-baked theory that he's the Eminent Guard rather than the Construct, as I previously thought. But who knows? It's just fun to be able to overanalyze things again and come up with these silly theories. But anyway, now I'd like to hear from you all. Are there any mysteries about Hyrule's ancient past that you hope Age of Imprisonment will address? Or should Hyrule Warriors stay out of the lore and just leave it unknown? Feel free to let me know your thoughts in the comments. Hope you enjoyed this video. Please feel free to subscribe for more Zelda content. And if any of the theories I mentioned were interesting, I've linked them in the description for you to check out. There will certainly be more content to come as Age of Imprisonment approaches and is finally released. As always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.